Share. Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. So good to see you for another week here. Welcome to week 8 of the Shredder Adventure series. I can't believe we've been having these weekly talks for 2 entire months now, 8 whole weeks. It's been so much fun. By the time April rolls around, we will have spoken to 3 past Olympians spanning 8 different Olympic Games, 2 future 2021 Tokyo Olympians, 2 world champions, all of whom spend much of their time training to be the best in the world. But we also have adventurers who haven't made a career out of their sport, but are sharing their passion of their sport and adventures with us. I really hope you'll continue to enjoy these conversations, which are running every Wednesday until April, until we start riding outside again. And again, feel free to invite your friends and family to enjoy these chats together with us also. The more, the merrier. As always, we'll start out the call with a little bit of Zoom admin. I'll be letting folks into this call through the waiting room and also hanging out in the chat room to take all of your questions. This call is all about you girls being able to ask this week's guest, Nichole, questions about her life as a medical professional, a sponsored athlete, and a world traveler and philanthropist. And we'll talk about that term in a minute. You can ask about what it's like to be sponsored by Patagonia and Yeti, what it's like to bike in Uganda and start a nonprofit. You can ask her about her awesome trail dog, Ray, anything you want. So feel free to raise your hand when you have a question and I'll call on you to unmute yourself. Or have your adult write a question in the chat box that you can ask Nichole if you prefer that. So without further ado, I introduce you to Nichole Baker, who is one of the most impressive humans I've ever been lucky enough to meet. Nichole has just done so much in her life. It's hard to believe that she's still so young. Most of what I know of Nichole is from following her on Instagram and from listening to her partner's podcast from a few months ago. For those of you that don't know her partner, Payson McKelvin, he's a pro mountain bike racer that is a super cool podcast called The Adventure Stash. So for those parents listening in, and you kiddos too, I highly recommend listening to his awesome podcast that features top male and female cyclists and adventurers. In fact, I think you'll recognize quite a few of his guests, as we have been lucky enough to have them on our series also. Anyway, Payson did a 4-part series on Nichole's life and accomplishments a few months ago. It might have been more like 6 months ago now, I'm not quite sure. And I really enjoyed this series because Nichole is just an incredible person. So Nichole, please interrupt me if any of this is not accurate, but Nichole grew up in a military family and went to something like 13 different schools, I think, growing up. She went off to college, became interested in science and medicine, and eventually pathology, which is the study of diseases or the cause and effects of disease. In addition to her career as a pathology assistant in her hometown of Durango, Colorado, Nichole is a phenomenal mountain biker. She routinely plans and then rides epic multi-day adventures into the high alpine mountains near her home, sometimes alone and sometimes with friends, carrying everything with her on her bike. She's sponsored by high-profile brands such as Patagonia, Yeti Bikes, and Osprey packs, and she's a Title IX catalog athlete model. And actually, girls, I'm going to ask you a question before we get into the next chapter of Nichole's life. And I wondered if any of you know the word philanthropy and know what it might mean and what you think a philanthropist does. Do any of you have any ideas? Let's see if I see any hands here. Oh, Lydia and Emma. What do you think, girls?
I think it means, based on the name, I think it means like they help plants grow.
Help plants
based on the name.
Yeah, so you think that kind of prefix, that fill-in part of the word plant? That's a really good guess.
It means someone who helps people who don't have enough food or who don't have enough money for something, so they can and they just help people.
That's awesome. Yes, those were both very good guesses, and the second one is more accurate, but I also liked the answer of the first one as well. Yeah, so exactly that. It's the emphasis on others, right? So it's a person who looks for or actively looks to promote the well-being of others, and the emphasis on others is rather than themselves. So you're not doing something to help yourself or promote yourself, but you're actively engaging in something to promote other people. Kind of like this group did over the holidays, right? Do you remember when you all generously donated toys to Toys for Toga, and you also donated some money to our Shredder's Holiday Give Back event? we were able to give all those toys and over $2,000 to other organizations for our community members that need the money and toys more than we do. That was our Shredder's philanthropic initiative for the season. So we didn't take those toys and money for ourselves since we don't need it as a group, but we were able to each give a small amount as a toy or money so that together we can make a big impact and help others in our area. So that was our kind of Shredder's philanthropic initiative. But back to Nichole and her philanthropic initiatives. Having spent her career thus far in pathology, traveled around the world on epic bike adventures, and participated in other nonprofit international relief efforts abroad, Nichole decided to start up her own nonprofit called Pathology. One thing I loved hearing about on your podcast with Payson, Nichole, was the fact that you started this nonprofit without much of a solid plan. And I'd love to hear more about this evolution of your nonprofit and how that happened. But my understanding is that it started out as a way for you to use your healthcare system skills in pathology that you learned in the US to train developing communities in Uganda about sustainable pathology practices in their own medical centers in Uganda. Pathologic still does this, and it is still the main focus of your nonprofit, I believe. But in addition, you are delivering solar lights to villages close to the hospital that you support in Uganda. And girls, you'll never guess how she's distributing these solar lights to these villages: by bicycle. So not only can you use your bicycle for awesome fun in the woods and to get to and from your friends' houses in your neighborhoods, you can also use your bike to do good things for others. Nichole has figured out how to make her athletic pursuits support her philanthropic pursuits. So in order to fund the nonprofit that she started, she auctions off her awesome Yeti bike and Patagonia and Osprey gear at the end of every season. So being psyched about mountain biking has led her to epic adventuring. Adventuring has attracted the attention of fantastic sponsors that provide Nichole with gear for her local and international adventures. And then the money she raises by auctioning her sponsored gear goes directly into allowing her to improve the efficiency of healthcare systems and pathology labs and deliver lights to remote villages in Uganda. It's this beautiful, positive feedback system of mountain biking, of kindness, of science and adventure and medicine, and just plain doing good for humanity that continually feeds back into itself. It's so cool and super impressive how you've made all this work, Nichole. We've had a lot of really impressive and high achieving athletes on here. I know you're good friends with Kate Courtney, for example, but to see where the mountain bike has taken you and how you've created this platform of good using so many tools that are important to you is super cool. All these tools, your brain that's full of so much useful science that you can apply to the medical world in developing countries, your love for the outdoors and bikes and the adventures it takes you on, your passion for helping others, and your drive to create Pathology. It's awesome. And it really feeds into the conversations that we as Shredders had a lot during the fall when we had our shoulder season about how if each one of you girls do something small that is good, like donating food to our local food pantry or cheering up a classmate that you see on the playground or helping and encouraging another Shredder during our rides, as a collective group of over 100 girls, if each of us are doing one small thing, we as Shredders make a huge positive impact on our community. So enough of me talking. Nichole, we're super pleased to catch you before you head off to Uganda. And I'm wondering if you could introduce yourself to the girls and maybe tell them a little bit about what you were doing when you were their age and maybe how you got into mountain biking. And we can show some pictures along the way if you don't mind.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Anna. That was amazing. I'm really excited to be here. It's quite the honor to be able to talk to you all tonight. My childhood was, like Anna said, I moved around a lot as a kid. And so I picked up running because that was something easy that I could do in all of the places that I lived. And that's how I was introduced to trails, which became a big love of my life. So when I was introduced to mountain biking in my early 20s, that was kind of the connection point, was when I was younger and spending all the time on the trails running.
Nice. Awesome. Do you think you could share a couple of those pictures to get the
Sure. Yeah. What type of photos would you like to see? Some from medicine, some of the science photos.
Yeah. Can you start out talking a little bit about your I don't know how much of your day you're spending doing that job at this point, and I know that has been a bit of a transition for you recently, but maybe you could talk to us about pathology, how you got into it and the science behind it.
So I still am working technically part-time in anatomic pathology. But when I'm here, when I'm in Durango, I'm full-time in the laboratory, and then I'll take time off completely away from Durango, and then I come back. So my days are spent in a laboratory, and I'm part of a team that you don't typically see when you see a doctor. We are the people that the doctors send their questions to. So if a patient doesn't feel well and they see their doctor, the doctor will send us a sample, and then we'll look at it under a microscope. And I will show you a photo of that. Give me 1 second. This is going to take a tiny bit of time.
Nice. We got it. We can see it.
So that is me at my laboratory, and I'm looking at a slide that has tissue on it. So I'm looking at the cells, which are the basic building blocks of life, which I'm sure you've heard of, that we're able to look at very closely and see if there is an issue with the cells. And then we give that information to a doctor, and then the doctor will choose how they're going to treat the patient. And let's do.
I can share the PowerPoint too that has the pictures that you sent me, if that's easier,
Okay.
Nichole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Let's
Sounds great.
do that. And then we had a bike question already. Would you mind answering a bike question? I know we're going to jump around a bit, but Isabella, you had a question. Would you mind asking your question while we share the screen?
Yes, I did. Have you ever rided with anybody, like just on a normal path or something? And did you ever get hurt riding?
That's a good question. Yeah, I love riding with friends on bike paths, on trails, really anywhere. I have been hurt on my mountain bike, but lucky for me, I was able to, I had a fall where I hit my hip on a rock and I had to get some stitches, but
Oof.
I was okay. And it was pretty soon after that I was able to ride my bike again.
Cool.
And can you tell us a little bit about the different, I know you do a lot of adventuring right in your backyard, which is incredible to live in a place where you can just explore where you are, but I think you've done a couple of, separate from Uganda, a couple of mountain bike adventures globally. Could you talk to us a little bit about those?
Yeah, the photo that you have on the screen is actually in northern India, and that is deep in the Himalaya, and we are hiking our bikes up a very steep cliff line. And basically that trip, we were visiting villages in a really remote area of India that had different groups of Buddhist people. So we were staying at monasteries and biking along these paths that were kind of becoming eroded from different storms. And yeah, we spent almost an entire month exploring that area.
Wow. Super cool. And where else have you, I know you've been out in California and around the States a bit. Are there some other bike packing sort of adventures that you've done?
I've done a lot of bike packing adventures in the San Juans, like you said, which are in my backyard. I've done a lot of exploring in places like Scotland, and then I've been in a couple different countries in Africa, including Uganda and Kenya. And then most of my exploration has been just kind of pretty close to me, but way, way out there. The San Juan Mountains are beautiful and huge and very close to Durango in Southwest Colorado.
Is there a lot of planning that goes into those trips?
Yes.
Spreadsheet?
Spreadsheets, lots of time on CalTopo, kind of
Oops.
to the mapping service.
Oh, nice. Lily, you have a question.
Where is your favorite place that you've rode?
My favorite place that ridden? I'd probably say right here in Durango, right in the mountains in my backyard. I feel very lucky to have such a beautiful place to play in, and it's very easy to come back to because I do love it so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that where you started riding bikes? Was in Durango?
No, I started in Michigan.
Okay, yeah. Nice. I was gonna say that's a pretty amazing place to start.
No.
There's another question.
So the photo that's on the screen there is actually from my trip last year in Uganda. I had gone through a small park that's near Mbarara, which is where I work, which is in the southwest of the country. This is called Lake Mburo National Park. And I rode my bike on those roads and saw all sorts of animals, including those zebra.
Actual zebras. So can we step back a second and talk about Uganda a little bit and how I know I introduced the topic in the introduction, but what is that like? I mean, are you going every year to, or have you been every year to Uganda up until now? And has I talked about the evolution of starting the nonprofit. It seems it's changed over the years. Maybe you could talk about that, how you got into the biking with the solar lights, and that sort of evolution of the process.
Yeah, I started working in Uganda about 5 years ago. And my first trip, I just planned to teach. And I loved it very much. The people were amazing. And I felt that we were both gaining so much from the education. And I loved it so much that I knew that I would continue coming back. And because I wanted to get to know the area that I was working in, I decided to bring my bike. And that is about the time that MPOWERD asked me if I would like to be involved with one of their giving programs to distribute solar lights. And I just decided, because I didn't have a lot of time, that I would just combine the two. And then when I combined the two with the bikes and the lights, I realized that the connection to the people was so much greater than I could have imagined. And it was a really beautiful part of my trip and something that I look forward to every year now.
That's wild. And how do the solar lights, so are they for for the homes or for the hospital, or what are the lights for specifically?
Well, the photo that you have up right now, these kiddos are what are called P6 pupils, which means they are, I guess, the equivalent in the US would be 5th grade. And they're about to test into what we would call middle school. But in Uganda, sometimes school ends at 5th grade. And so in order to go to 6th grade, you have to take a test. And most of these kiddos don't have electricity. So they're at a disadvantage to take that test. So those solar lights allow those kids to go home and study at night so that they can take the test and go on to secondary school, which is what happens after P6.
Wow. That's wild. And are you visiting different villages every year you're going, or have you revisited some?
I have revisited some, but I usually distribute to different schools. This class, this was my first trip to see them. And I typically will do routes that are within the boundary of the hospital. So the kids that I am seeing in these villages could potentially go to the same hospital that I'm teaching at. And so that's kind of my way to get to know the villages that the hospital is serving.
Yeah, I love that kind of full circle-ness of it, right? And that really encompasses so many of the things that you've done in your life bring all of these different strengths of you as a person together. And the fact that once you're there, that you can support them both from a technology perspective of having lights as well as a medical perspective. It's a beautiful thing.
And the energy that I get from it every time I connect with someone new is what brings me back every year.
Yeah.
And so I really, really love these projects so much. I end up moved every time.
That's amazing. And how often are you working with kids now? I know you're not doing teaching, but you're seeing children in the villages that you're visiting. And in the hospital itself, are you seeing a lot of patients, or are you working with the medical staff mostly?
I'm mostly just seeing the medical staff. There are a couple procedures that the pathologist residents are learning. And so there's 1 day a week that the residents will do procedures, and I'll see the patients that come in to visit for those. But for the most part, at the hospital, I'm just working with the doctors that are learning pathology.
Okay, so that's this photo here. Is this in Uganda with the doctors,
Yes.
the hospital? Oh, amazing.
That's,
And it's the same hospital you go to each year then?
it is.
So,
This year I'm going to a couple new hospitals, but I'll be returning to this first hospital as well.
and how many are in Pathologic? Is it just you, or I think that you're maybe hiring some other staff?
It's hard to say that it's just me because I feel like I do have a pretty extensive team, but none of that team is doing work on the ground in Uganda, but they're doing just as important of work here. So I have a computer programmer named Maurice, and he lives in Belize. And so he and I will work remotely very, very frequently on projects. And then I have a designer who helps me do promotional, I guess, posters. And she also helps me with my website and helps me get the word out about what I'm doing, which is really critical to the fundraising that I do. And then I have a group of science professionals that I'll bounce ideas off of when I get to the point of creating lesson plans to teach. So I do have a collaborative group, but as of right now, I'm the only one going to Uganda, but I'm hoping that that will change. I'm hoping to recruit other doctors and other medical professionals to go and teach at these hospitals, but we're not there quite yet, but hopefully.
Nice. Cameron, you have a question. Would you like to unmute yourself? I think it's Cameron. Are you there, kiddo? Oh, actually, I don't see her anymore. Oh, there you are. Yep. Good.
What pets do you have and what type are they?
Ooh, I have a dog named Ray, and let me mute myself so I can yell down the stairs and see if she'll come up here really quick.
I think we have a couple shredders on here that have
Here's
pets.
Cameron.
So that'd be really fun.
Come here, bud. Hi, buddy. This is Ray. Oh, she is right here. And we just discovered is a blue lacy dog, which is the state dog of Texas. She's very fast and she loves to mountain bike. And let's see if I can get her. There she is.
Oh, what do you think, girls? So cute. How long have you had her now?
She is just about 2. So I got her when she was 8 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
She's been great. Oh, look at that puppy.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Do
Does she
most
come
of
on
you
the trails
have
with the girls?
I'm sorry?
Just asking Lydia and Emma if their dog comes out on the trails with them sometimes.
No. Well, Anna does, but not Dilly. Anna's the one over here. The
What's she
stinky
doing
one.
doing the trails? Oh,
She'll bike with us.
nice.
They're
Stinky
the
one.
best bike dogs.
That's awesome. Lily, I think you have a question. You also have a little trail dog, don't you?
Yeah, we have a yellow lab. He's 7 months. I don't know where he is. Probably changed something. But what does your dog travel with you? And what do you think his favorite or her favorite place is to travel?
Ray's favorite place to travel is definitely any trail at all. When she sees me pull my bike out, she will have a fit if she is not coming along. So Ray loves to be on the trails, and it doesn't really matter which trail it is as long as she can run.
Can you tell us a little bit about, oh, there she is. Well, there he is. Oh my gosh. Last time, so Lily, when I saw you at Gore a couple weeks ago, or I saw your mom at Gore, he was like 3 times the size he was the last time we saw it. It was crazy in the fall. And she was all like cuddled in Aunt Sophie's lap a few months ago.
Yeah, he's a big baby. He's very, yeah.
Lydia and Emma, you have a question?
My question is, when you were biking on the dirt road in Africa, what did the zebras act like?
They mostly, well, as I got closer to them, they just ran away, but they didn't seem very scared until I kind of rolled a little bit closer to them, and then they just kind of moved out of the way. And they're not very fast, although they look like they might be. They're kind of slow, and they don't really get out of the way too much, so they just move to the side of the roads and just ride through.
That is so cool.
Thank you.
Zebras.
Yeah, I've seen warthogs, and I've seen giraffes, and I've seen zebras and monkeys and all sorts of animals.
Oh, Jen Hoffman, or that's not, Jen Hoffman's the mom. Sorry. Go ahead, why don't you ask your question?
What's it like in Uganda? Is it like really hot, or is it cold, or is it like what's it like there? I've never been.
It's very, very warm and dry. It's right on the equator, so the days are long, but very, very, very warm most of the year. And when I go in March, it's just at the beginning of the rainy season. And so there'll be times that I'll see some rain when I'm out there, but for the most part, it's probably upper 80s or 90s, pretty warm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how much are you riding day to day when you're delivering the lights? Is it a full day of riding?
Yes. I typically I'll ride anywhere between 60 to 100 miles a day. And I will have a car that'll join me to translate at some of the smaller villages. And then I carry lights on my back to give to smaller villages before the checkpoints. This year, I will not be doing that part of the trip. I'll be riding and distributing lights, but I will only be distributing to the schools, and not that way we limit the amount of hands that are going into the bag for the lights. But yeah, it's really.
Have you picked up some of the, what is it Swahili? What is the language in Uganda? Are there tribal languages in each
There
village?
are. The national language is actually English, but most of the villages are some Bantu derivative. So in Imbrara, they speak Runyan-Kole, and it's only a very small area that speaks that language. So I know some of that tribal language, but for the most part, they're all so different around where I am that it's really useful to have a translator or have pictures. I wish I had a little diagram that will show people how the lights work with the sun, and then
Oh yeah.
yeah, that seems to be useful. And you're kind of playing charades, and the kids really, really enjoy it, and it becomes funny, and just trying to understand.
What's it like when you roll into a village and the reaction from the kids and the adults? And is there some trepidation? Are people kind of anxious about your arrival? Do they know that you're coming? What's that arrival process like and feeling and atmosphere?
It's usually really, really positive and really, really curious. The kids, usually when I roll up into a village, they don't know that I'm coming, and school districts do. But when I roll up, I look different. So there's usually a lot of pointing and laughing and smiling, and they approach me pretty openly. And that's kind of how I choose the villages I'm going to stop in along the way, because I want wherever I stop for it to be a positive experience. So if people are curious and excited between the schools, that's usually when I'll stop and talk and play. If people are unsure, then I usually just will smile and wave, and that's the positive interaction that we have.
That must be so tricky, right? With the social norms, which are so different here, right? And you did not know the language, and to be able to gauge that feeling when you come into those villages is a
Well,
life.
it's usually overwhelmingly positive. So
Yeah.
people, they'll smile and run along next to the bike. And I mean, that's the majority of the villages. It's just, they're seeing something different. Women don't typically ride in Uganda. So just seeing a woman on a bike is not something that is a normal sight. And then, yeah, there's just other cultural differences where people are like, you're different and we want to know why you're here. And it turns into fun talking.
Girls, have any of you traveled to anywhere in Africa in your little lives? No one? Yeah, I would have been surprised if you had, but I was just curious. Lily, you had a question.
What is it like with COVID? Like before you go, do you need to quarantine, or is it? I'm sure it's probably different from like the years before.
It's very, very different this year. So I will need to have a negative COVID test before I go. And I feel very fortunate that I've had my vaccines, but I will, before I arrive and then before I return home, I'll have to have negative COVID testing. And then I'm going to be very, very careful in the villages to reduce the amount of contact that I have with people, but while still trying to distribute lights to the schools that need them. So things are definitely different this year, but I'm still happy that I can get out there and still kind of be involved in my projects. It's a good question.
Yeah, and how is it, I mean, being in the medical profession this year in Durango as well, how has it been? and thank you for all that you're doing in the medical profession as well.
For me, I see a lot of surgical specimens. So when we first had our big shutdowns with COVID, I just had a reduction in the amount of samples that I would see.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm lucky that I'm in a kind of an insulated little mountain town. So we haven't had too many issues. We had a few weeks that our ICU is pretty packed, and we were nervous that was going to become a longer term scenario, but it's been okay here, but definitely still challenging, and challenging for patients that need surgical procedures to get those procedures. So that's been a change.
And then with your riding in the area, have you seen an increase in users of the trails throughout this year? I know you're a regular to your backyard. So what have the trails been like this year? Has it felt crowded?
I mean, there's definitely a lot more mountain bikers on the trails. Our local trails have been very, very busy. It's very positive to see so many people trying mountain biking for the first time. We kind of have the perfect community for it. But we still have, the trails that I really love the most are really far out there. And so I haven't seen too much of an increase in people out in the like desolate high country. But in town, we've definitely seen a lot more, and it's been a mainly positive thing.
Yeah, mainly. Does anybody have any questions about Africa? About riding, about what Nichole might be packing for her trip? Pretty quiet bunch today. Are you still waking up from your February break? Oh. So you just had a big sponsorship or a big auction drive for the nonprofit. What is that like? Is that different every year? Is it? I know the largest item is the bike, right? That Yeti's able to donate. And how does that work? It's all online?
This is actually my first time ever doing an online event. They've always been just in Durango. I tried to engage my local community to come out, which is a really fun way for me to practice talking about what it is that I'm trying to do, and getting my outdoor community excited about the products. This year, I decided to do it online because obviously events aren't happening this year, but I definitely still needed to fundraise. I actually don't auction my mountain bikes. I just sell them each year. So I'll just sell 2 mountain bikes, and the money from those sales, because I can make more money in that way.
Yeah.
Just are donated directly to Pathologic. But this year, companies were so generous, and we had lots of packs from Osprey and clothing from Patagonia and clothing from Yeti, and people were really excited to get involved. So that was actually very positive. I raised more money than I was expecting, and it's going to go a really, really far way this year with everything that's going on with COVID and the reduction of resources out there.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the recent news you received about the clinic out there.
Oh, so in a lot of medical schools in developing countries, they will collaborate with big universities in other countries. And one of those institutions is Harvard University. And that is a university that has supported the medical school that I work at for many, many years. And this year, because they were struggling with COVID financially, they froze all the funding that they would typically give to that laboratory. So I am the only person contributing to laboratory supplies this year. And that impacts the research, it impacts the residents' thesis projects, obviously patient care. So that's why I'm pushing to go this year instead of postponing until it's a little bit more stable with COVID, just because I don't want their operations to pause, because people are still getting sick at the same rate that they were before COVID. So I want to help where I can.
That's incredible. Yeah, and at this point, they're probably really counting on you, which must feel maybe a little bit of a burden, but also just a huge honor, I'm sure, to be able to support them in that way.
It's very much an honor. I think the scariest thing about this year is that I'm actually bringing, they're called antibodies with me. It is a solution that allows me to look for specific diseases on cells. I typically don't take those with me to Uganda. They're usually shipped within the country, but they're unable to get those antibodies this year. So I'm traveling with them, and I don't know how customs is going to respond to me having, a cooler with refrigerated drugs, essentially, to get into the country. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Liddy and Emma, you've got a question. We've got a few questions. Isabella's next.
What company do you get your solar light from to give to the schools?
That is a great question. It's called MPOWERD, and they make lamps called Lucy lamps. And you might actually see them around your community. They're inflatable little lights, and they're solar powered, and they're headquartered somewhere in New York, I think New York City.
Isabella. Oops, just stepped away. Do you have a question? I see you, Isabella. Do you have a question, babe?
Wait, me or somebody else?
You, Isabella.
Oh, I forgot. I'll tell you. I'll put it in. I'll tell you if I remember it soon. Okay.
Sounds great. And Lily, got a question?
What's it like to be sponsored by Patagonia and all those really cool brands?
It's really an honor to work with those brands. I've been working with Yeti for about 6 years, and I came on to help with product development with Patagonia, one of their product testing people, and they have been huge contributors to the things that I do, and we do media projects together. And when you're working with a company that you really, really respect, it just feels very nice to be in alignment with them on and off the bike.
Because Patagonia took a bit of a break from making mountain bike clothes, right? And then recently came back to it. So you were part of that?
Yeah, they had a big group of us meet in Downeyville to kind of discuss the things that we should be thinking about with some of the clothing design, and they really take it seriously, having athletes give their feedback about their products while they're creating. So yeah, that's been really fun.
That's wonderful. I actually got, you girls have seen me and Sophie and Zoe, my two girls, we wear our matching, the same shorts that you wear, actually, the blue ones with the little flowers on them. So the three of us wear our matching Patagonia shorts, but they don't currently have a kids line. So if, you know, if we wanted to get into the mountain bike kids line with Patagonia, we'll be happy to promote that for you.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely bring that up.
Well, there just aren't that many kids clothing brands for mountain bikers, especially girls. And so, yes, I would I would recommend. I think that there's a bit of a niche for that right now. There's so many kids on bikes, and you know, we have 100 girls right here in Saratoga that are riding mountain bikes, and I have parents all the time asking, you know, where should I get some kids bike clothes? So
that's amazing feedback.
Yeah. And Courtney, you have a question. Would you like me to ask, or would you like to unmute yourself? Okay, she's staying muted, so I'll ask the question, which is, how did you choose the career in pathology?
How did I choose pathology? That is a great question. I worked in research for a number of years, and my very first degree was actually in ultrasound. And in ultrasound, I got very familiar, and I really enjoyed working with anatomy. And so anatomic pathology, another word to describe what I am, is an anatomist. So it's very, very different jobs, but the expertise behind both of them is very similar. So that is kind of what made me interested in pathology. And then I also had a very good friend who was very sick when I was younger, and I became very interested in working with different types of cancers, which also led me into anatomic pathology.
Very interesting. It's not a field that I'm super familiar with, so it's interesting to hear what all goes into it, and that you can pursue it in Uganda as well. So we had a question from Ruby. Ruby, would you like to, oh, it's from Piper, sorry. Piper, would you like to ask your question?
What color is your bike?
Oh boy, I've got a couple different turquoise bikes, and then I've also got a gray bike, but I definitely prefer my turquoise, which is like a blue.
What color is your bike, Piper?
Green. Well, green, blue, and gray.
Nice. Good combination.
That is a good combination.
And then we had a question about food, I think. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down questions here. Food was, where did it go? What food do you bring? And I think they're referring to, I'm not sure actually. Cameron, maybe you could specify your question. And do you mean when she's going to Uganda, what food is she bringing on her bike trips when she's delivering lights? Cameron, did you want to specify that question? That's okay. Maybe you can answer that question, Nichole. What food do you bring, and can you say what it's called? If there's special food that you eat over there.
Well, the food that I bring from home, I take a lot of Bobo bars and a lot of Pop-Tarts, and food that I would typically ride with here. But then I do eat a lot of the local food when I'm in Uganda. So it's a lot of rice, and the staple starch in Uganda is called matoke, which kind of looks like a banana, but is more similar to a potato in taste. So that's a lot of the local food that you eat in Uganda. And yeah, those are kind of what fuel me out there.
Awesome. And Isabella came back and asked her question. Isabella, do you want to ask?
Yeah. Have you gone in any races? Thank you.
That's also a good question. I am not a racer. When I started mountain biking, I did a few races, and this year, there's a couple different events that I will be participating in, but I would not call myself a racer, even though I guess they would be technically considered races, but they're more adventure based. So I'll be doing a gravel race, which is in Vermont, called Rooted, which is put on by a couple friends. And then
That's really cool.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. It'll be new for me.
It's amazing, girls, right? So we've seen different racers on this series, right, that have done so many different disciplines of cycling. And that's been really cool, Nichole, that we've spoken to track cyclists, we've spoken to downhill racers, we've spoken to endurance racers and cross-country mountain bikers. And it's really cool that there are so many options out there for cyclists, right? Like, it's not just the one sport. You know, we in Saratoga are focusing on mountain biking, like cross-country style, traditional mountain biking. But to have this smattering of bike disciplines, and to hear all of you speaking about the different places you can go on your bike and the different disciplines that you can race on your bike, and you can really do anything you choose, girls. Like, in terms of it's always an adventure. And I think that's what we're always kind of promoting, is getting these girls out adventuring in whatever capacity that is. And Nichole is talking about gravel racing, which traditionally hasn't been a race, like a timed event, but these days you kind of almost have the option to, in this particular race, whether you want to race it or whether you just want to ride it. And there will be stations set up, and you can stop at the station if you want to refuel, or you can just carry on past it and have your fuel in your jersey pocket like you would during a normal cross-country race. So even in one event that is supposed to be, you know, one type of bike that's riding in this particular event, you can mix it up and decide how you want to approach that particular event, which is really kind of cool.
Really, really cool.
Yeah. Are you enjoying the graveling?
Yeah, it's new for me. I'm definitely more of a mountain biker, but my partner really, really loves gravel, and that's a discipline that he races in. So I was introduced to it kind of in the past couple years, which is pretty incredible. And that's another really great thing about cycling, is your relationship with the bike can change at any time. And you can start as a cross-country racer, and you can decide that you want to adventure, or you can change, you know, to gravel riding. And it doesn't matter what age you are when you make that choice. It's just it's something that can kind of evolve as you age. And for me, the bike has been really important to me since kind of being introduced to the bike, and what I've done on the bike has changed significantly through the different stages of my life.
Yeah, it really has. That's the story of the evolution of where the bicycle has taken you, and through your career, as well as your adventuring side of you, is really cool that you can kind of make a career out of that as well. And not from the racing perspective, from the adventuring and then giving to others perspective. And it's really nice for all of these girls to see. And in that regard, Alina has a question, which is, how do we contribute to what Nichole is doing and get in touch with you about your organization?
I have a website. It's pathologic.org, and I've got an email that you can email through that, or also on Instagram. And I'll always be open to answer questions about what I'm doing and how you can get involved. I think because this year was so successful with my online auction, I'll probably have another fundraiser online. And yeah, I think just having support from people around, and positive feedback is very, very nice.
Well, we are certainly rooting for you over here. And it's so much fun to have seen the evolution that your nonprofit's taken, and how you've been able to kind of shift your career and your adventuring around in the short time that I've been following you on Instagram anyway. It's really fun to watch. And also the support that you and Payson show for each other in your different endeavors is really nice to see and to follow. So, and it's nice to see Ray. Little Ray.
Payson just popped around the corner from a bike ride. You want to say hi?
Sure.
Oh. Hi, Payson.
Hello. How are y'all doing?
You're doing well.
You have fun?
Yeah, girls.
Did
Yeah,
you have fun?
really nice conversation with Nichole, and it's such an honor to be able to catch her right before she takes off to Uganda too. So just such a varied background that we've been able to enjoy, picking her brain a little bit about what she's been doing. And I first learned about her through your podcast. So we've been able to plug your podcast a little bit and hopefully get some of these kiddos to listen in on the amazing speakers and job that you do with your podcast. So it's nice to meet you.
You too.
All right, take care. Awesome. Well, girls, do you have any other questions for Nichole before we let her carry on with her next adventure? So you leave quite soon for Uganda, and there must be quite a lot of, Lily has a question, but quite a lot of planning going on right now.
Where is your next big trip gonna be?
In about a week and a half from now, I'll be heading back to Uganda, which is about a 35-hour trip to get there.
Wow. How many flights is that?
Usually 4 to 5.
Wow.
It's pretty intense.
Well, we wish you all the best in this trip this year, and we'll be following along through Instagram, and I'll be able to repost on the Facebook page of the girls. And if you're ever in upstate New York, you know where to find us. Actually, when you come to Rooted, you'll be close by us, and we'll look out for you. And I might be at that event as well, so it'd be fun to meet up. Yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're really, really busy right now, but it's such a privilege to be able for these girls to be able to learn your story and how what the bike has brought you and how your path has gone the way it has. It's very, very impressive. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Have an awesome day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye, girls. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
It was a great time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.